The ballroom was silent. Crystal chandeliers glistened, wine glasses froze mid-air, and whispers rippled like wildfire. Clara Bennett, the untouchable CEO, stood in the center with her eyes locked on a man who clearly didn't belong. Ethan Carter, a single dad in a wrinkled shirt holding the hand of his little girl. And then Clara's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. "Pretend to be my husband, just for tonight." Every guest gasped. A billionaire CEO begging a man who wasn't even part of their world? Unthinkable. But the most shocking part was Ethan's reply. The Bennett name had power in New York. Skyscrapers carried their company's logos, newspapers praised their legacy, and yet, when people spoke of Clara Bennett, they lowered their voices. She was brilliant, ruthless, flawless on the outside, but at every gala, every boardroom meeting, the same whisper haunted her. Beautiful, rich, successful, but utterly alone. Clara's life was polished to perfection. Her penthouse glittered with glass walls overlooking the city, her closets lined with designer suits, her schedule filled with power meetings. Yet, when she returned home at night, silence pressed down heavier than the weight of her empire. No footsteps echoed, no laughter spilled from the kitchen, only the hum of the city beneath her windows. She told herself she didn't need anyone. Love was a distraction, family was a weakness. She built walls higher than the towers her company owned. But sometimes, in the mirror, after the makeup came off and the heels were set aside, she saw it. The loneliness she refused to admit to anyone, even herself. Across the river in Queens, life looked nothing like Clara's. Ethan Carter's apartment was small, paint peeling in the hallways, but inside was warmth. The fridge was plastered with crayon drawings, the couch worn but soft, and the air carried the smell of pancakes on Sunday mornings. He didn't have millions, but he had something Clara never did, the sound of his little girl's laughter filling the rooms. Ethan wasn't supposed to be raising Lily alone. His wife had passed away too soon, leaving him to navigate fatherhood with no roadmap. He worked long days as a mechanic, grease under his fingernails, bills stacked on the counter. But every night, he tucked Lily in with a bedtime story. She was his reason, his anchor, his entire world. Their lives were galaxies apart. Clara's built on steel and glass, Ethan's built on love and sacrifice. They should never have crossed paths. But destiny has a strange way of weaving lives together, threading opposites into the same fabric when they least expect it. The night of the Bennett Annual Gala was meant to be just another performance for Clara. A dazzling dress, a flawless smile, and another evening proving she didn't need anyone by her side. For Ethan, that night was supposed to be nothing at all, until Lily tugged at his sleeve, pointing at the glittering hotel across town. "Daddy, can we just look at the princesses tonight?" she asked. Ethan tried to resist. They didn't belong in that world, but Lily's eyes, so full of wonder, softened him. By some twist of fate, one of Clara's assistants mistook them for late arrivals and ushered them inside the grand hall. And as the chandeliers sparkled above and violins filled the air, Clara's gaze found Ethan, an ordinary man holding the hand of an extraordinary little girl. Clara's night had begun like every other gala, handshakes that meant nothing, glasses raised with hollow congratulations, and questions disguised as daggers. "Still no one on your arm, Clara?" One board member teased with a smile too sharp. A rival smirked, whispering loudly enough for others to hear. "How can a woman without a husband be trusted to lead an empire?" Each word was a needle, pricking the armor she worked so hard to wear. She forced a smile, steady and cold, but inside her chest burned with humiliation. They didn't see her strength, her sacrifices, her brilliance. They only saw absence. Empty rings on her fingers, empty seats at her side. For years, she had swallowed the insult, playing the part of the unshakable CEO. But tonight, under the weight of dozens of mocking eyes, something inside her threatened to break. And then she saw him. Ethan stood awkwardly near the edge of the ballroom, his daughter Lily tugging curiously at the sparkling fabric of a guest's gown. He was so clearly out of place, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his eyes wary. Yet there was a steadiness in the way he held Lily's hand, as though the entire world could laugh at him and he would still protect her. Something about that struck Clara harder than she wanted to admit. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble as she crossed the room, her face composed but her heart racing with desperation. Ethan looked up in confusion, as if wondering why a woman like her would walk toward a man like him. And then, without warning, Clara's voice fell from her lips, low, urgent, and trembling with a vulnerability she never showed anyone. "Pretend to be my husband, just for tonight." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, glasses froze in hands, and every eye turned toward them. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Clara Bennett, the woman who had everything, was begging a stranger, a mechanic, a single father? The disbelief in the room was suffocating, heavy with judgment. Ethan blinked, his brow furrowing. "Excuse me?" he asked, half thinking he had misheard her. He wasn't sure if this was some cruel joke or if he had stepped into a play he didn't understand. But the intensity in Clara's eyes silenced his doubts. She wasn't joking. She was pleading. Around them, whispers exploded. "She's desperate. This is embarrassing. A CEO with him?" The weight of the room pressed down on Ethan. He wanted to say no. He wanted to walk out with Lily, back to the safety of their little world. But then Lily's small hand squeezed his, her wide, innocent eyes looking up at Clara with something he recognized: sympathy. Ethan's chest tightened. He could see his daughter's unspoken thought: "She looks lonely, Daddy." And in that split second, against every instinct that told him to run, Ethan nodded. "All right," he said softly, "just tonight." And with that single nod, the fate of 3 lives began to change forever. The moment Ethan agreed, Clara slipped her arm through his as if they had walked this path 1,000 times. Gasps turned into fake applause, the kind meant to sting more than to celebrate. "Mr. Bennett, finally revealed," one man mocked, raising his glass. Clara's smile never wavered, but her nails dug into Ethan's sleeve like a silent plea: "Don't let go." Ethan straightened his shoulders, though he felt completely out of his depth. Suits worth thousands surrounded him, people who measured worth in wealth, not character. He wore the wrong shoes, his tie slightly crooked, but when Lily's small hand wrapped around his, courage filled him. He wasn't here for himself, he was here for her. And, strangely, now for Clara, too. Questions came like arrows. "Where did you two meet? How long have you been married? Why keep him a secret?" Ethan stumbled at first, searching for words. But Clara swooped in, her voice smooth as silk. "Some things are worth keeping private," she said, flashing a smile that quieted the room. It was half-truth, half armor, but it was enough, for now. Still, suspicion simmered. Richard Hale, Clara's fiercest rival, leaned back in his chair with a predator's grin. "Interesting," he said loudly. "All these years and suddenly a husband appears out of thin air?" His eyes narrowed at Ethan, scanning every detail. He smelled blood in the water, and everyone knew Richard never stopped once he caught a scent. At the dinner table, Lily's innocence softened the tension. She giggled at the sparkling chandeliers, whispered questions about the silverware, and called Ethan Daddy with unfiltered love. To the guests, it looked rehearsed, but Ethan knew it was the only honest part of this charade. And strangely, Clara found herself smiling too, a real smile she hadn't worn in years. But behind that smile, Clara's chest ached. She wasn't just pretending for pride tonight. She was hiding a storm much larger than loneliness. Documents buried deep in her company's files threatened to surface, a scandal she feared could destroy everything her father built. And Richard, with his sharp grin, seemed closer than ever to exposing it. Ethan leaned toward her during a toast, his voice low. "Why me? Why drag me into this world?" His tone wasn't cruel, just tired. Clara's eyes flickered with something raw. "Because," she whispered, "I had no one else." For the first time, the mask slipped. The Ice Queen was gone, and beneath her stood a woman terrified of crumbling. Ethan wanted to push back, to remind her this wasn't his fight. But Lily, resting her head on his arm, looked up at Clara with quiet trust. In that moment, he understood. This wasn't about playing pretend anymore. This was about survival, and whether he liked it or not, he was already part of her battle. The gala's laughter dulled as Richard Hale stood, papers clutched in his hand. His voice sliced through the music. Ladies and gentlemen, while we toast to the Bennets, perhaps we should also toast to truth. He waved the documents high. Your beloved CEO has been hiding fraud, fake numbers, deals that never existed. Gasps shot across the room like sparks from a fire. Clara's smile shattered. Her body stiffened as whispers spread like wildfire. Board members leaned in, exchanging worried glances. Investors already pulling out phones. She felt the ground slipping beneath her feet, the empire she built crumbling in front of everyone. For years, she had prepared for battles in boardrooms. But not here, not like this, not exposed under crystal chandeliers. Richard's grin widened, relishing the spectacle. You see, when a leader hides her weaknesses, she forgets they always surface. No husband, no family, and now, no integrity. His words dripped with poison, each one designed to cut deeper. Eyes turned from Clara to Ethan, as if searching for cracks in their hastily built facade. Tell me, Mr. Bennet, Richard sneered, do you even know the woman you call wife? Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't his fight, his war, his world. Every instinct screamed to take Lily's hand and leave, to protect their small bubble of safety. But then he looked at Clara. Her face pale, her eyes glistening, her hand trembling in a way no one else noticed. For the first time, he saw not a CEO, but a woman about to break. Clara turned her head slightly, whispering through clenched teeth. Go, you don't owe me this. Walk away before this ruins you too. Her voice cracked at the edges, exposing fear she had hidden for years. No one had ever seen her vulnerable. No one except this mechanic she had pulled into a lie. It was the one act of honesty she could offer, giving him an escape. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he felt Lily tugging his sleeve, her tiny voice barely audible. Daddy, she looks sad. The innocence of her words cut deeper than Richard's cruelty. Ethan's jaw tightened, a choice forming inside him, heavier than any decision he'd made since the day he became a father. He could walk away, or he could stand. The ballroom waited, breathless, hungry for scandal. Clara's board members leaned forward, investors hovered, Richard's smile gleamed like a knife ready to strike. And in that moment, the mechanic from Queens knew every eye was on him. His answer would decide Clara's fate, maybe even his own. The silence pressed in, demanding he choose. Ethan straightened, his voice steady, carrying further than he expected. He gripped Clara's hand firmly, holding her upright when her knees threatened to buckle. She's my wife, he said, his words echoing off marble walls. A hush fell over the room, broken only by gasps of disbelief. The single dad had just chosen to fight a battle that wasn't his, but would soon become his destiny. The room erupted the second Ethan's words struck the air. Gasps turned to murmurs, murmurs to chaos. He's lying. This is madness. She planted him here. Richard's laughter cut through the noise like broken glass. Stand by her? He mocked. Do you even know what she's done? His voice was fire, meant to burn everything Clara had left. Clara felt her chest tighten, her breath uneven. For years, she had fought alone, shielding herself behind walls of ice and steel. And now, in her darkest hour, a stranger, no, not a stranger anymore, chose to hold her hand in front of the world. She blinked back tears, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in years, being seen. Richard slammed the documents onto the table, pages scattering like fallen leaves. "Look at the proof," he shouted. "Fraud, embezzlement, betrayal. This empire is built on lies." Board members leaned over the papers, whispers swelling. Investors shook their heads, already imagining stock prices tumbling. The walls of Clara's empire seemed to tremble with every accusation. Ethan's voice rose again, clear and unwavering. "Those papers don't define her. I know the woman she is, strong, honest. She has carried more weight than any of you ever could. And if you think she'll fall tonight, you're wrong." His words weren't rehearsed, weren't polished. They were raw. And that rawness struck something the room hadn't expected. Clara's vision blurred as tears finally broke free. For so long, she had believed strength meant silence. But now, as Ethan stood beside her, she realized strength could also mean letting someone fight for you. Lily's tiny hands clapped together from her seat, her innocent voice ringing out, "That's my mommy!" The room, for a moment, cracked open with stunned laughter. Richard's face flushed red, fury twisting his features. "This is pathetic," he hissed. "You think words will save her? You think this mechanic can stand against me?" He stepped closer, venom dripping from every syllable. Yet, for all his bluster, Richard suddenly looked smaller. Because while he brandished papers, Ethan brandished conviction. Clara tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. Her voice, though trembling, finally rose. "I am not perfect, but I am not a fraud." For the first time, she wasn't hiding behind business jargon or cold poise. She was raw, vulnerable, human. And the board members, the guests, the investors, they saw her differently in that moment, not as an untouchable queen, but as a fighter. The ballroom reached a fever pitch. Some scoffed, others whispered, but many began to doubt Richard's spectacle. Ethan turned to Clara, his eyes steady. "You don't have to fight this alone anymore," he whispered. And as his words sank into her heart, Clara realized the truth. The night she thought would end her was becoming the night that would change her forever. The storm that Richard unleashed didn't last long. Within days, investigators pored over the so-called evidence, only to uncover a trail of forged signatures and fabricated data. The fraud wasn't Clara's. It was Richard's trap, carefully constructed to bring her down. When the truth broke, his empire of lies collapsed faster than anyone could have imagined. The board, shaken by their own doubt, returned to Clara with apologies thinly veiled as excuses. "We should have known better," one admitted. Investors followed cautiously, relieved the company's foundation remained intact. Clara, however, wasn't quick to forgive. She had seen how quickly loyalty turned to suspicion, how fast admiration turned to betrayal. Trust, she realized, wasn't a luxury, it was a choice. Ethan stood quietly by her side through it all. He didn't belong in the skyscraper offices or glossy boardrooms, yet his presence grounded her more than any corporate ally ever had. When the press hounded her for statements, he shielded Lily from the chaos, carrying her on his shoulders through crowded streets. Clara began to wonder if the life she had built, polished and cold, had been missing something all along. In Ethan's small Queens apartment, warmth replaced marble walls and glass ceilings. Clara visited often, not as a CEO, but as a woman rediscovering the meaning of family. Lily would race into her arms, tugging her hand to show new drawings or beg for bedtime stories. The first time Clara read aloud to her, she felt something stir inside, something softer than ambition, something she hadn't known she craved. One evening, Clara confessed quietly, "I don't know who I am without the company." Ethan looked at her, wiping grease from his hands after a long day at the garage. "Then maybe it's time to find out," he said simply. His words weren't wrapped in charm or strategy. They were real. And somehow, that reality mattered more than the hollow praise of investors and rivals. Lily, with her innocent wisdom, was the bridge neither adult knew they needed. She asked questions that made Clara laugh, drew pictures that made her cry, and held both their hands as if it was the most natural thing in the world. For her, there was no scandal, no boardroom politics, only the hope that her daddy wouldn't be lonely anymore. Clara's heart softened in ways she hadn't expected. The woman who once built walls now found herself opening doors, sitting on Ethan's couch, cooking pancakes with Lily, even laughing until tears rolled down her cheeks. These were not moments she could buy, not victories she could claim in business. They were something far rarer, belonging. And slowly, Clara realized the masquerade that began as a lie had become something far truer than she ever allowed herself to dream. She hadn't just found a partner to stand beside her in crisis. She had found a family. And for the first time in years, Clara Bennett, the woman who had everything, finally had the one thing she never thought she deserved: love. Love didn't enter Clara's life with roses or candlelight. It came in grease-stained hands, in the innocent laughter of a child, in the unwavering courage of a man who had every reason to walk away, but didn't. She had spent years proving she didn't need anyone, yet the moment she let someone stand beside her, she discovered strength she never knew existed. Ethan, once only a mechanic and a father, became more than the sum of his struggles. He was the man who stood in a ballroom of wolves and chose loyalty over fear. His courage rewrote Clara's story, not as the untouchable CEO, but as a woman capable of love, of forgiveness, of new beginnings. For Lily, he was already a hero. For Clara, he became home. Their lives stitched together slowly, not in grand gestures, but in the ordinary. Pancakes on Sundays, storybooks read by two voices instead of one, walks in the park where Lily ran ahead, calling them both to follow. Clara, once consumed by deadlines and strategies, now found herself treasuring minutes, seconds, moments that couldn't be measured in dollars. The city outside still moved at its relentless pace, deals signed, empires built, rivals scheming. But inside Ethan's small apartment, time slowed. The woman who once commanded skyscrapers now sat on the floor coloring with crayons, laughter echoing in a place that had once felt too quiet. And somehow, she realized, this was the empire worth fighting for. People still whispered, they always would. Some said Clara had fallen, others that she had settled beneath her station. But those who truly watched saw something different. A woman who traded loneliness for love, and a man who proved that ordinary could be extraordinary. Together, they were stronger than any rumor, brighter than any scandal. Clara's story became more than a corporate legend. It became a reminder that wealth without love is emptiness, that power without people is weakness, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is let themselves be vulnerable. For Ethan, for Lily, for Clara, family wasn't blood or status. It was choice. It was the promise to stand together when the world turned away. And so, the night that began with desperation became the night that saved them all. Clara found her heart, Ethan found his partner, and Lily found the family she secretly longed for. Not a fairy tale, not perfection, just love, real and flawed and strong enough to endure. And sometimes, that is the happiest ending of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more, because life isn't about the wealth you hold or the power you wield. It's about the hands you choose to hold when everything else falls apart. And when you find that hand, never let it go.